We're going to follow up on some feedback from past sessions addressing sublayers and creating different file types. And then we're going to jump into importing ARC files into Onyx, and then also an intro to Onyx from ArcGIS Pro. So on that note, we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sarah. She's going to be your speaker / leader, kind of trainer on this session today. And so we'll go ahead and start with some open Q&A. If any of you out there have any questions, let's go ahead and get us started off.
Yes. So like Ronnie said, if there's any burning questions that you have from either past sessions or that as you've been messing with the program, feel free to unmute and ask really quick. Otherwise, I'll get started in the sublayers.
I've got a question. I was wondering how you make a layout with multiple maps in it. If I could share my screen for a second, I can show you what I mean.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. This sort of setup here, setup here, where you have a state map up in the upper left corner, kind of a zoomed in, kind of middle ground map here in the upper right, and then the project map in the middle. It's kind of the format that the SHPO's office would like to see.
Yeah. Yes, but you're wondering how to make something kind of like that.
Yes.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, so this has kind of been our virtual training map, and it's not set up perfectly to answer that question, but I'll give you kind of a guide into it. So you're able to add map frames into your maps. And so that's what I have here, showing the map that's tied to called map, but you can add multiple map frames and tie them to multiple different map features or extents within it. So if I was to, for instance, add another one, and it's not going to work perfectly because it's not set up for it, but I could add another map frame down in this bottom corner, and now it's looking a little bit different. So if I go to properties, this is where I'll be able to kind of edit that and either tie it to an additional map like here, or I can start messing with the actual extent of that map frame within the same map. And you see my bars kind of hiding my tools. If I could show it to you. So if I come to this map frame up here, you are able to kind of edit it, but that's not what I'm looking for. Hold on, let me find the right button. There we go, activate. That's when I'm now able to kind of edit the extent, treat it a little bit more like a map so you could see it, and then kind of start tweaking it from there. Did that help you, John?
Yeah, it does. That's excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. And so that's how too. So like if I was to add a new map into this project, I could have like multiple maps on the same export layout. Like if I needed to show something really different, or like, hey, this is in relationship to this other project over here, things like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Anyone else with some questions to kind of start us off?
I just had one more. I was wondering, do you know where you can find the layer that shows land ownership?
Yes.
Kind of that basic one where state is blue, Forest Service green, BLM tan.
Yes, so it doesn't necessarily come properly symbolized like that, but the layer itself is found on AZGeo, the AZGeo database. Let me actually see, I could probably pull it up for you here, and then I can drop the link in the chat. AZGeo database. So this is where Arizona houses all of its publicly available geodatabase layers. And so you can find a bunch of stuff on here. They have things like parcels, land ownership, Forest Service boundaries, all of that is found on this website. And if I type in, forget which one it's housed under, but land ownership, it should filter those out, and then it's just selecting the correct one I'd have to dig for it. They call it a little bit different, but I can hunt it down and find it for you. And in the meantime, I'll drop this website in the chat for everyone.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Doesn't look like it. Thank you, John. All right, Sarah, you're good to go.
Okay, so one of the questions that we did get from one of our feedback surveys is talking about sublayers. Now, they did not elaborate on what they mean by sublayer, and so it could mean multiple things. So I'm going to kind of highlight what I think they were going for, and then I'll go into a little bit deeper dive where if you're new, you're going to want to cover your ears because it's going to get real confusing. But the high-cut version of sublayers is that on the left side of ArcGIS Pro, these are all feature layers. And within a feature layer, you can have, there's multiple things that they could be referring to for sublayers, but basically you can have multiple features in the layer that are symbolized differently. And so it's almost a sublayer within that feature layer. And so you can see that here at our last training, we talked up through this kind of example with troughs and storages and things. And so we have our storage symbolized differently than our troughs out there so that you can see the difference and see what we're talking about in a very quick kind of snapshot way for our maps. The other thing, and so if you remember, that's tied to our attribute table. We went through and we gave these points actually a specific attribute within them where we name them trough and storage so that we could go ahead and symbolize them in that way. The other thing it could be referring to is drawing order a little bit. So you can see I'm right now on my drawing order. So if I move, and this is where ArcGIS Pro defaults to. So if I move, for instance, this line, which would be our pipeline, up above the points, you'll see on the map that now the line is up on top of those points. And so this can be helpful if you're like, oh, I'm not seeing something on here and I should be. It's probably because you just have something drawing on top of it. So another really good one is this state land. If I brought it up above this merged polygon layer, I'm now going to see that red boundary clearer than previously. And the same thing goes within a layer. So like we're not seeing this red boundary necessarily because either we don't have something symbolized to it correctly or the pasture is drawing on top of it. So that's always something to kind of be aware of. The next thing that they could have been talking about is you can group layers together. So for instance, if I highlight two layers using Control and click, and then I right click on it, it's going to pop up this set of options that can be a little overwhelming, but one of the things in there is grouping layer. So I could group this layer, these two layers together, come to properties again, right click on it, and be able to rename it to something like, I don't know, ranch pipeline. That way, when I'm now dealing with these layers, since they go hand in hand together, I can turn them on and off together without having to go through and click or select each one. And then I can also move them together if I wanted to move them up or down, depending on the drawing order together, so that they kind of start to stay together. And so those are kind of the basic things that when we're talking about sublayers, they may be selecting. Now, if you're new to ArcGIS, this is the point where sublayers could get really complicated. So if you don't understand what I'm about to say, don't panic. It's very confusing. But basically, another version of a sublayer is essentially an imagery layer. So like my base layers are imagery layers that are georeferenced. And those you can import into ArcGIS Pro, typically come in as map and image layers. And when those come into ArcGIS Pro, it's typically best to then host them as a web layer so you can make sure you're seeing all of the sublayers and there's certain like properties and things to make sure that the sublayers within those image layers are showing up, and it starts to get very complicated very quickly. But yeah. So that's kind of a brief view into sublayers and then just a touch into the map image layers. If somebody wants me to dive deeper into it, I definitely can, but probably at a later training when we have a little bit stronger foundation in ArcGIS Pro. Any questions on sublayers or drawing order or grouping layers? Cool. Then I will keep going. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about is creating different file types. So at our last training, we talked about how to export a shapefile. And when we do it that way, we typically right click on a shapefile and then we'll go to data and we can actually export the feature. But not all programs or systems will take shapefiles. So there's multiple other file types that it could be. And if you remember, shapefiles are a little bit complicated in that they need 4 to 7 different file types when you're looking at the file explorer or where that file is housed. There's some others that are a little bit simpler in their KMZs and JPX files. And those ones are simpler because they're one file type, but they have a lot of the information and will still draw in a lot of programs. So the way that I typically go when I need to export something into a different file type is the best and quickest is to just search it. So if I wanted a KML file, it's easy enough to type KML and then it will automatically come up with either moving a layer to a KML or a KML to a layer. This is also how you can import KMLs into ArcGIS Pro and make them into a layer that you can edit. And then the other file type is a JPX. So, and a little bit different features, the JPX to features. They sound a little bit different, but they're essentially saying the same thing. So I'm going to start with the KML. So we'll do a layer to KML. And once you click on it, it's going to pop up over on the right-hand side. Another way to get to it would be through this analysis tab. But once we come here, we'll have a drop down of input layer. So this is what we want to export out. I'm going to go ahead and select our ranch pipeline points. And so it'll pull all of those points. You can select something. So like, let's say I only wanted, well, I could go to the attribute table and select only the troughs so that only the troughs pull out. And then this output file type, this is where we'll actually be able to select where it's going to be saved at. So I'm going to go ahead and browse and go to this PC, go save it where I need it to be so that I can find it again. And I'm going to go ahead and call it range points. When you drop down this, it says all supported types, basically meaning like any file types. There's 2 options though. So there's the KMZ and the KML, and only you do want to make sure you're selecting the correct one if you're having any issues, because it does typically default to a KMZ file. But for Onyx and some other systems, the KML file tends to be a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and select KML right now and hit save. And then it's not done yet though. I have to hit run. Otherwise, it's basically, I just told it where to put it. Now I have to tell it, yes, go forth and run that action. And so you'll see it's pretty quick depending on how big the file type is. And if it was to fail, I would be able to say view details and see why that failed. So if I come now go back to where I saved it at. Boom. It should be right there. And you'll see it has this Google Earth symbol next to it. That's because KMLs are one of my computer knows that when it has a KML, that Google Earth is one of the few programs that could open it directly. And so it automatically kind of adds that to it. If you don't have Google Earth, your computers won't know that. But once you download it, they typically do. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it should open up Google Earth and show me my points. Oh, not the thing. So this is how Google Earth imports it, and you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, just kind of the numbers within it. But that it will, when you click on it, it will say if it's a storage or not. So I'm going to discard those. The next file type, we could do a KMZ if you wanted or needed that file type. You just do the same thing, but select KMZ instead of KML. The other big one that's pretty popular for a lot of systems are JPX. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And so you'll see JPX has a little bit more options for us here. So when I drop down and do my ranch pipeline point. So one thing to note is JPX, I believe, only does point and lines. They do not do polygons. So that's why you see the drop downs a little bit different, where I only have my ranch points and my ranch lines available. The next would be the output. And again, we're going to go put this PC onto my desktop so that I can find it. Let's see, we'll do. So we have, you'll see this JPX over at the bottom here, and you'll see that my KML file is not showing up. It's because it's only looking for JPX files right now, but that's okay. You can see I selected line, so I'm going to change that to line so that I can have them both. The next thing is you can add what you want the name to be. So I'm going to go ahead and make that our name, which is where we have our storage and troughs there. And you can kind of select the attributes that are going to go with this a little bit more precisely. So I'm going to do that, name and name, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit run. Now, and then I'll see I have my ranch points that are in a KML, and I have my ranch lines that are in a JPX. So yeah, so this is kind of one of the steps that I do when I'm going to be importing them into something like Onyx or Gaia or any of the other mapping apps that are available. And it is something to note. So Arc Pro or ArcGIS does have, or Esri really, does have their own mapping software that does sync up to Arc Pro a little bit more. It's actually quite powerful, and it's called Field Maps. And there's also surveys with it called Survey 123. And so eventually we will have a class on that as well. It's a little bit more advanced, but there's a lot you can do with those programs that sync up really nicely to ArcGIS Pro. But now that I have those different file types kind of created, I can go ahead and go into Onyx. So this is Onyx Hunt. When Onyx does have multiple different mapping softwares. Another really popular one is the backcountry or the off-road, and they recently just came out with Onyx Fishing, and each of them has their different benefits to them. I personally use Onyx Hunt just because I do hunt, But some people really prefer the backcountry. They have a little bit more road and access layers. And some people prefer off-roading because it has a little bit more road-focused layers. And again, the fishing, more fishing layers and what type of fish or access to lakes and things like that. So it just comes down, if you're ever interested in it or using it, to which one suits you best. But generally, they all have the same tools within them for the most part. So, and they're laid out the same way. So this is how it looks online. They do have an app, which is where I use it, where you can download maps and layers and things like that so that you can use them offline. But if you come to this layers tab, like I said, this one's hunt, the others would be off-road or backcountry. If you come to this one really quick, this is where you have a bunch of access to different layers. This one's set specifically to Arizona, but you could add other states. And it just has different things available. One of the ones I use a lot is the sections, and then also the government lands layer, which is essentially land ownership, to kind of just keep things running smoothly and know where I'm at and what I'm crossing. So we made those KML and the JPX files in ArcPro. Right here in my content up at the top is where we can go ahead and import those. And you'll see that Onyx allows for KML and JPX. So if you did a KMZ file, it would not come over into this. But I can go ahead and I'm actually going to go ahead and drag my ranch points to start over there. And you'll see it. So I dragged it in and now I have them down below here. It tells me the size, the date, things like that. If I wanted to, I could put them into a new folder, like if there was a bunch of them, to help keep things organized, which I think I am going to go ahead and do for this. And I can hit import. And so you'll see, just like on Google Earth, it has 1, 2, 3, 4. Not the most helpful, but I can go ahead and have it show me on a map. And there's all my little pins out there. If I was to click on one, it'll take me straight to it, give me the coordinates, some information in the folder. The KMLs do have these notes attached to them, kind of giving information related to the symbology that was in ArcPro. It's not really all that helpful. Sorry. So one of the things that I like to do right when I import any KMLs is go ahead and edit them. And I can clear out that notes and make them name something a little bit more helpful up there. Right now, this is using the location. That is the default. I can have more, and they have a bunch of different options. And again, these change depending on which type you're using. So this one's hunt, so I have a bunch of wildlife options with different, access or drop points or points of interest, gates, and then of course a bunch of hunting species. Then you can also change the colors of them as you need and things like that. If you were actually on the site, you could add and attach a photo directly to it, and that will follow that point if you were to export it from Onyx later on. Yeah. So, yeah. And then if you remember, I clicked that folder button. So this is the folder that it is. It just has the import date and time. Again, you can click on the folder and hit these 3 dots, rename it to Ranch Pipeline. Yeah. Let's say we closed out. If we click on my content again, we'll see that that folder's there. We'll also see the content created and what kind of content has been created so that you can help navigate back to it. I'm going to go ahead and import again the line. gonna be a little hard to go find it. Go ahead and go drag it over again and hit again. It comes through JPX, a little bit different file type, and I can go ahead and hit import. And you'll see that it's importing as tracks, which is fine. If you were to click on it, it'll give you kind of the elevation going through, the length. It'll also, you can again edit it and change the symbology associated with it. I do like the JPX typically a little bit better because even though they come in as tracks for their lines, you are able to kind of bring in notes and things like that much better than from a KML. So if I had, so yeah, it's a pipeline, save, because yeah, if you remember that I put name for both of them, so this pipeline 200 PSI must have been what was in that name column. So I just edited the name in Onyx. And down at the bottom here, you have this add folder button. So I can add it back to that ranch pipeline folder. Keep it all nice and organized. The other really cool thing about Onyx is if somebody else has Onyx Hunt or the type of Onyx you're using, you can go ahead and hit share. Oh, this is a new one, so it's not fully set up, but if I hit save, then it'll give you this link and you can literally just text it to people and they'll be able to view your lines on their Onyx. And different subscriptions. So there's the view only, and then now they just came out with the contributor option. So like you and whoever you're working with could all have a folder that you're contributing to, but not be able to edit each other's content. Trying to think. If you didn't want to import into Onyx, up in this upper right-hand corner, there are tools. So you could go ahead and draw. For instance, we'll go ahead and draw and just be able to simply click and draw that on your computer, a little bit more user-friendly and super simple to use for the most part. You can change the line color on polygons and as well as the area color within it, or have no color there. And then notes can add to the folder, same type of thing going on. It does give you your acres right away and your perimeter, which can be nice. And again, you can share it. Trying to think. Other features for Onyx is, so right now I'm using their topo map. You can click down at this bottom corner and they have a hybrid map. This is typically what I use because it has a topo map on top of an imagery layer. So it can be really helpful to really see what we're looking at and dealing with, like this wash here. The other option though is just a normal satellite. And if you really want, you can go 3D with it and it'll show you kind of the elevation you're looking at, and you can exaggerate that as much as you want or don't want so you know kind of what you're getting into out there. Or how steep it is. The other really helpful tool on here is that if you come to map layers, if you're planning treatments or thinking of treatments or things like that, we typically have slope limitations. And they do have, so this is their roads layer, but somewhere in this land access, they do have a process slope. Let me go back to 2D. Make sure I turn it on. So they have slope angle and slope aspect, and so it can kind of be a quick, it's not 100% accurate, it's as accurate as the topo layer that they have in there. But it does give you kind of a quick idea of what kind of percent of slope you're looking at up there potentially. Which can be handy for planning.
I'm gonna stop you real quick, Sarah. Is there anyone that has any questions so far as we're go on anything at all. Don't be afraid.
Sorry, I'm a talker. You can always interrupt me. Just go.
Sarah, I had a question. Do you use Onyx on your phone in the field?
I
You put your
do.
project on that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different apps that I use. So on this one, we're covering Onyx, which is one that I use quite frequently because so now that this is on this website, it's actually actively syncing to my phone. So it like automatically comes over. The other big one that I use is Avenza Maps. So that one you actually create a map in ArcPro and then you can export that map to Avenza and have that out in the field.
Also, Sarah, is there a free version of Onyx?
There is not, but there is a free version of Avenza where you can have 3 maps, and Onyx does have a 7-day trial period, which is actually what you're seeing here.
Great. Any other questions? All right, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. Well, the other thing I was going to show you guys is like something that happens to me is I take points in the field, and then once I've taken them, well, I need them into Pro though. Like I can't. This is like a good one to grab stuff from, but not necessarily a good place to make a map to share with somebody on that doesn't have Onyx. So I'm going to use our polygon here that I drew, and if I come into it, I can go to my content and I can come to areas. And when I do, I can select it, or I could come to these 3 dots, and it has this export feature. So you can do this with multiples or individuals. If you wanted to do multiples, you just have to select them. So I could do select and then export. Kind of another way to get there if you did need to do multiple things. But when I export, oh look, we're back to our JPX and KML files, because that's what Onyx likes to think in. So you can choose either or. I'm going to leave it at JPX because it's not, well, I'm going to bring it to a KML so that hopefully it stays in a polygon type. And go ahead and hit save. You'll see that it downloaded as Onyx markups in there. And when I come, I'm going to go back to ArcPro. And remember we had, when I looked for KMLs and JPX, so I had layer to KML, which are these layers to a KML, or I had KML to a layer. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to go ahead and navigate to it. Oh, let's see if I can navigate to the download successfully. Let's see. Hopefully. Oh, maybe. Maybe not. There. Should be that one. There we go. So Onyx markups 060625. So that's what I'm looking for. And so you'll see it's gonna target folder. So this is my where my map is housed. If you remember kind of back at that first training, I showed you guys how it was organized. So that's where it's saving to, is in this maps folder, not the geodatabase though. And then I can choose the name of it. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as that for now. And then when I hit run, it's going to go ahead and bring this folder. It's a polygon and it's symbolized like this, but now it's in something that I can use. So now it's a feature layer, and just like normal, if I wanted to, I could go and change the symbology and make it into what I'd like it to be. So, and you can do that. And if it was if I did choose a JPX, remember when we searched JPX, it also had JPX to feature, so it works exactly the same way. Yeah. So that's how you're able to kind of move to and back. I will say the one thing is if you're attaching photos to points and you're pulling them in, sometimes the photos come, sometimes they don't. It gets a little messy when you start looking at the attribute table. but it does stay tied to them. And when you open them in something like Google Earth, you'll be able to see those photos right alongside those points, but not as clean when you bring it into Arc Pro. It's not a problem, it's just not as readily seeable for those pictures. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything that I wanted to cover for Onyx, kind of get you guys the bare basics if you were looking for something in the field that, and how to kind of move between the two, even if you do choose a different app. We're going to kind of keep going through the apps so that you guys kind of have some options. So next I think will be Avenza, but eventually we'll get to field maps also, which like I said is a little bit more complex. But yeah. Any questions?
All right.
Said one more. In Onyx, is the map datum NAD83, or can you set the datum?
I believe you cannot set the datum. I believe it is in the WGS, but I can check right now. Yeah, so they're in the WGS 1984 because, like I said, that's the datum that most websites are in when you start to house it on the web. But so if you did want it into NAD 87, we would have to transition it into it.
If my map in ArcGIS Pro is in NAD83 and I import it as WGS, does it convert it on the fly, or would I need to?
It will not. It will keep it
Okay.
in that WGS and it'll actually house it. This is why another good reason, like your geo database. So this one isn't housed in my geo database right now. Now this whole map is in WGS, so it wouldn't be a problem. But if your map was in NAD 83, when you go to import that into your geo database, it'll throw a flag and be like, hey, this isn't the correct spatial reference. I can't do that. That way you know, okay, I gotta transform it into it. And you can do that in ArcGIS Pro and
Nice.
transform that to it. I'll actually make a note and we'll show that at the next training for you. It's been a while, so I don't think I can do it on the fly, but
Right.
I can.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions for Sarah while you have her? Anybody? All right, just to let you guys know, again, this is recorded. The recording will be available. It'll also have a reference sheet to go with it. That'll be available. I'll send out an email for you guys. Session 1 is currently available on the AACD website. We'll have session 2 available soon. I will be sending out a feedback form as well for you guys. If it's possible to fill that out, because that really does help us kind of tailor everything for you. And that way we can address questions that you do have. But we do highly recommend the interaction here. It helps Sarah kind of in the moment tackle everything. And then that way, again, if you guys have anything that's kind of on the spot for her, feel free to ask in the sessions. It's really helpful, I'm sure, for everyone else that's here as well. So, Sarah, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, other than I put AACD's website in the chat. So if you guys want to go navigate to that previous training, you can.
Perfect. And again, maybe any last kind of questions that you have for anything like in your field that you're going through for ArcGIS Pro that you're kind of stumped with? Please feel free to ask. I think I might have one coming in. Give us 1 second. And you guys can unmute your microphones as well and just ask. That's perfectly fine.
But if not, we'll give you a few minutes back on your Friday morning.
think I might have one typing in. Maybe? No? All right. Okay. I think that might be it. All right, on that note, we do these trainings on the first Friday of every month. So you guys stay kind of tuned. And again, I'll be sending out emails with the next link for you and also the schedule and what we'll be doing. And then please look out for that feedback sheet. That way we can go ahead and address all the questions and make sure we tackle exactly what it is that you guys need. Sarah, anything else?
Oh, that's it. Have a good Friday. Good weekend,
All right,
everyone.
you guys, have a great Friday. Thank you so much.
Bye.